I found my wife's secret $250, $0 inheritance from her shady ex, only to discover she secretly transferred it all into her sister's name and pawned our family home during our divorce. I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. Honestly, I thought I knew everything about my wife, Lisa. We'd been married for 7 years, and up until recently, I really believed we had a solid, honest relationship. But then, out of nowhere, I stumbled upon something that turned my world upside down, something I couldn't ignore or brush off. It all started with a few odd things I noticed, little inconsistencies in her stories, small signs she was hiding something. But I never suspected it was this. It was a typical Tuesday evening. I came home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. The house was eerily quiet when I stepped inside. Usually, Lisa would be in the kitchen cooking dinner or at least watching TV, but there was no sign of her. I called out her name, but no answer. I figured she might have gone out with her friends, which was unusual for a weekday, but I didn't think much of it at first. Then I saw the laptop open on the dining table. Her email was logged in, and there was a new message in her inbox. I hesitated for a moment, knowing I shouldn't invade her privacy, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked open the email, and it was from a bank, an account she'd never mentioned before. The email detailed a transfer of $250, $0 from an inheritance she'd supposedly inherited from her shady ex, Mark, who she'd told me was a distant memory. What hit me like a punch to the gut was the fact that she'd transferred all that money into her sister's account. No warning, no discussion, just a quiet transfer as if it was nothing. I knew Lisa had a complicated history with Mark, but she'd always insisted she'd cut ties with him and that she'd never come into that money. Turns out she was lying. She had been hiding this inheritance all along, and somehow she managed to transfer it without me knowing. That wasn't the worst part. I kept digging through her emails and bank statements, trying to piece together what was happening. That's when I found the real shocker. Not only had she transferred the inheritance into her sister's account, but she'd also pawned off our family home during the divorce process. I had no idea she was planning to do that, and honestly, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach all over again. The house I poured my blood, sweat, and tears into gone, just like that. It was all so sudden, so brutal. I'd been so blind to her manipulations. She'd always been bitchy, quick to lie, and good at hiding her true intentions. I started to realize she had been cheating on me for months. That's when I found out about the affair with her boss, Jason. She'd been sneaking around, telling me she was working late, but I'd seen the texts, hot, explicit messages, even photos of them doing who knows what. She lied about everything, about her fidelity, about where the money came from, about her entire life. I couldn't believe I'd been so stupid. All the signs were there, but I refused to see them. She was good at pretending everything was fine, even when she was screwing other guys and secretly stealing from me. I thought I knew her, but apparently I never really did. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt this burning rage, this need to make her pay for what she'd done. I couldn't just let her walk away with everything, my trust, my home, my dignity. I knew I had to come up with a plan, something that would hit her where it hurt, revenge. But I also felt lost. Part of me wanted to confront her, to scream and shout and demand answers. Yet another part of me just wanted to disappear, to erase all of this from my life. I was angry, betrayed, humiliated, and honestly I was scared. What disturbed me most was realizing how much I'd relied on her, how much I'd trusted her, and how she'd shattered that trust in the most brutal way possible. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? How could she lie so effortlessly? That night, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the screen with all these revelations flooding my mind. I knew I had to decide what to do next, but I wasn't even sure where to start. All I knew was that I couldn't let her get away with this, not without a fight, not without making her understand that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I had to find a way to turn this around, to reclaim some semblance of control and make her pay for what she'd done. And that's exactly what I started planning that night. I didn't know the full extent of her deception yet, but I knew enough. She lied about her inheritance, her fidelity, her loyalty. She thought she could cheat on me, steal from me, and walk away. Well, I was about to show her she was dead wrong. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, replaying everything I'd discovered the night before. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. I was furious, but also numb. I knew I couldn't confront her blindly. I needed a plan. I couldn't afford to let her see how much she'd rattled me just yet. I had to be strategic, calm, calculating. I started by going through her phone records, trying to find out more about her affair with Jason. Sure enough, there were dozens of messages, sexts, flirtatious texts, plans to meet up after hours. It was clear she'd been lying from the start. I also found some emails from her sister discussing how Lisa had transferred the inheritance into her account and how she was planning to pawn the house. Seemed nervous, almost guilty. I realized that might be just as involved as Lisa, or maybe she was just her pawn. Either way, it was a piece of the puzzle I needed to exploit. I decided I had to get more concrete proof before I made any moves. I contacted a private investigator I'd known from previous work. I paid him to dig into Lisa's financials, see if she'd done anything else shady, and find out if she was still seeing Jason. Within a couple of days, I had a report. She'd been withdrawing money from her sister's account, possibly to fund her affair, and there were several clandestine meetings with Jason, confirmed by a few security camera clips from local coffee shops and parking lots. By then, I was simmering with rage. I also found out that Lisa had been secretly visiting a lawyer, presumably to finalize the sale of the house, since she'd pawned it during the divorce process. That was the final piece. She was actively trying to cut me out of everything, even after I'd trusted her with my life. I realized I had to act fast or I'd lose everything: my house, my marriage, my dignity. My plan was simple but ruthless. I wanted to catch her in the act, expose her lies, and make her see she couldn't run from the truth. I decided to set a trap. I arranged for a friend of mine who was secretly working with me to pose as a buyer interested in the house. I told Lisa I was planning to sell the property, and I wanted her to be involved in negotiations. She took the bait immediately, showing up at the house with her lawyer, her sister, and Jason, all pretending everything was normal. When I saw her walk in that day, I felt a strange mixture of disgust and satisfaction. She looked confident, smug even, but I knew her game was about to fall apart. I had everything I needed: photos of her with Jason, proof of the bank transfers, her secret plans. I was ready to confront her, but I wanted to do it publicly, to humiliate her in front of everyone she'd lied to. The moment came when I told her I had some documents to show her, and I pulled out the evidence I'd collected. I laid it all out: the emails, the bank statements, the surveillance footage. Her face went pale. She stammered, tried to deny everything, but I was already past caring. I saw her trying to spin her lies, but it was useless. She was caught red-handed, and I made sure everyone there knew it. Her reaction was priceless. She went from confident to desperate in seconds. She started crying, claiming she did it all because I was a terrible husband, because I didn't pay enough attention to her, because she was just trying to get some security for herself. She said I'd never understand her, that she was just trying to get ahead. But I wasn't buying it. I knew her game now. She'd been lying to my face for years. The fallout was swift. Her lawyer tried to argue, but I had the evidence. The deal to pawn the house was invalid. She'd done it illegally during the divorce without my consent. The bank transfer of inheritance, it was frozen, and I demanded that be subpoenaed to testify. I also had the private investigator ready to testify about her ongoing affair with Jason. I told her she could pack her things and leave. I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I wanted her out of my life, out of my house, and out of my mind. The humiliation she tried to throw at me, the lies, the theft, everything was about to come crashing down on her. And I felt a strange sense of relief, knowing that the truth was finally out in the open. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control again. That day marked the end of what I thought was a marriage built on trust. It was a brutal, sudden shock, but also a wake-up call. I'd been blind for too long, and now I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative, lying, cheating woman who'd stolen from me and betrayed me in the worst ways. I knew I'd have to rebuild from this, but I also knew one thing: she wasn't going to get away with it. Not without consequences. After everything spilled out in that confrontation, I expected her to break down completely, maybe beg for forgiveness, or try to spin some new lie. Instead, Lisa looked at me with this cold, calculating expression like she was already planning her next move. That's when I realized this wasn't just about a cheating wife. It was about a woman willing to destroy anyone who got in her way, including me. Her bitchy attitude had always been there, but now I saw the real her, manipulative, ruthless, and totally untrustworthy. I told her to leave and never come back. She tried to argue, claiming she loved me, claiming she was just desperate, that she'd do anything to fix this. But I wasn't buying it. I told her she'd lied about everything, her inheritance, her affair, the house, and that I was done. I wanted her out of my life, my house, my bank account. She looked at me with that same bitchy sneer, as if she thought she could still manipulate her way out of this mess. But I had the evidence, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way free anymore. She stormed out, screaming about how I was ruining her life, how she'd make me regret this. Honestly, I didn't care. I was too exhausted, too angry, and too betrayed to feel any pity. I called the police to document the scene, just in case she tried to come back or make a scene. I also contacted a lawyer and started the process of undoing her illegal transfer of the house and freezing her accounts. Over the next few days, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Part of me was glad to be rid of her, but another part was devastated. I'd given her 7 years of my life, and she'd repaid me with lies, betrayal, and theft. I kept going over all the signs I'd missed, all the moments I should have seen the truth. I realized I'd been so blind, so eager to believe in the fairy tale that I ignored the red flags. Now I was paying the price. I started to think about what was next. I knew I'd have to rebuild everything, find a new place to live, deal with the emotional fallout, and figure out how to trust again. But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd been manipulated, yes, but I was still standing. I had the proof, the legal backing, and most importantly, my dignity. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. My friends and family around me, and I found some solace in their support. They told me to focus on myself, to learn from this, and to never let someone take advantage of me again. I also started seeing a counselor to help process the betrayal. It was hard, no doubt about it. Every day was of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion. But I knew I had to stay strong. I had to rebuild my life from the ashes of this disaster. In the end, I learned a lot about trust and deception. Lisa wasn't just a cheating wife. She was someone who would do anything to get what she wanted, regardless of who she hurt. I realized that I'd been too trusting, too eager to see the good in her. But now I see things clearly. People like her don't change, and I can't fix what's broken. I can only move forward and be smarter about who I let into my life. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs sooner. I wish I'd been more cautious, more skeptical, but I also know that I can't dwell on the past. I have to focus on rebuilding, on healing. And I want anyone out there reading this to understand one thing: don't ignore the red flags. Don't let someone manipulate you or steal from you. Stand up for yourself, even if it means losing someone you thought was your. Because in the end, your peace of mind matters more than any lie they tell or any money they steal. The days that followed were some of the most intense of my life. I spent hours on the phone with lawyers, trying to untangle the mess Lisa had created. The house was technically still in my name, but she had managed to pawn it during the divorce, which meant I was at risk of losing everything I'd worked for. That realization hit me hard. I wasn't just betrayed emotionally. I was on the verge of losing my home, my stability. It felt like she had taken the last piece of my life I could rely on and shattered it. My lawyer was relentless, digging into the illegal transfer of the house, preparing to fight her in court. I also filed for a restraining order after she showed up unexpectedly at my apartment, trying to guilt-trip me, claiming she'd changed, that she loved me, that she'd do anything to fix this. I knew better. I had all the evidence of her affairs, the money transfers, her plans to disappear with the inheritance. I made it clear I wasn't falling for her lies anymore. If she thought she could manipulate her way back into my life, she was dead wrong. Meanwhile, I had to deal with the fallout of her betrayal on a personal level. My trust in people was shattered. I'd always been a straightforward guy, honest, loyal, and to see that all thrown back in my face was devastating. I started questioning everything. What was real? Who could I trust? How did I miss all the signs? It was a brutal wake-up call. I felt angry at myself for being so blind, but also furious at her for orchestrating this entire scheme behind my back. One thing I couldn't ignore was how much money she had stolen from me, whether directly through the pawned house or indirectly through her secret inheritance. The $250, $0 she inherited from Mark, her shady ex, was supposed to help us build a future, pay off debts, maybe buy a new car. Instead, she transferred it into her sister's account and used it to fund her affair and her lies. That kind of betrayal cuts deep. It's one thing to cheat emotionally. It's another to steal money, to manipulate the system for her own gain. I also started to reflect on her personality. Lisa had always been bitchy, quick to lie, and impossible to pin down. She was charming when she wanted something, but cruel and dismissive when she didn't get her way. I realized she'd been lying to herself as much as she lied to me. Her greed, her manipulations, they all stemmed from a deep-seated insecurity. That didn't justify her actions, but it helped me understand that she wasn't just some innocent victim. She was a master manipulator who'd been planning her escape for a long time. As I sat alone in my new, temporary apartment, I thought about what I'd do next. I decided I wasn't going to sit around and mourn the loss of my marriage. Instead, I was going to rebuild my life, smarter and more cautious. I had my legal team working on recovering the house, or at least getting compensation for the damage she'd caused. I also hired a financial advisor to help me sort through what was left and to make sure I didn't get duped again. I knew I had to be careful. Lisa had proven she was capable of anything. I also reached out to a therapist. Talking about everything from the betrayal to the money theft helped me process the emotional pain. I learned that I had to forgive myself for trusting her so blindly, but I also had to set firm boundaries for myself moving forward. I couldn't allow someone like Lisa to manipulate or control me anymore. I needed to rebuild my confidence and my sense of stability. The most surprising thing was how much support I received from friends and family. They couldn't believe how she'd managed to pull off such a scheme without me noticing. Some told me I was lucky I found out before she took everything. Others warned me to be cautious about trusting anyone again. But all agreed one thing: I deserved better. I deserved someone loyal, honest, and respectful. Lisa was none of those things anymore. Looking back, I realize I was naive. I thought love was enough. I thought honesty and loyalty were givens. But I learned the hard way that some people are just out for themselves, and they'll do anything to get what they want, even at the expense of others. I'm still angry, still hurt, but I'm also determined. I won't let her steal my future. I'll rebuild stronger and wiser. And maybe someday I'll find someone who actually deserves my trust. Until then, I'll keep moving forward, no matter how hard it gets. The weeks that followed felt like a blur of legal battles, emotional and stark realizations. Every morning I woke up with a knot in my stomach, knowing that Lisa's schemes hadn't just come close to destroying my life. They'd left behind a trail of chaos I'd have to clean up for a long time. The house she pawned was a huge blow, but the worst part was knowing she'd done it all behind my back secretly, without so much as a word. I kept asking myself, how could she be so cold, so calculating? It was like she had no conscience, no remorse. My lawyer managed to freeze her accounts, including the money she transferred into her sister's name. That was a small victory, but I knew it wasn't over. Lisa was cunning. She'd find a way to hide her assets or move things around. That's why I hired a private investigator again to keep tabs on her. Turns out she'd been trying to sell the pawned house through a shady broker, trying to get rid of the last remnants of what she'd stolen. I was furious. She thought she could just walk away, leaving me holding the bag, but I wasn't about to let her get away with it. Meanwhile, I started to rebuild my life piece by piece. I found a new place to live, smaller but mine. It was a step toward reclaiming my independence. I also took a hard look at my finances, tightening everything up and making sure I wasn't vulnerable again. I couldn't afford to be naive anymore. Lisa's betrayal had opened my eyes to how dangerous some people can be when they're desperate or greedy. On a more personal level, I was hurting. The trust I'd had in her was shattered, and I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. That's when I realized I had to work on myself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I started attending support groups and therapy sessions, trying to process the pain and anger. It wasn't easy. Some days I felt like giving up, but I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to keep fighting for my peace of mind. One thing I learned from all this is that betrayal isn't just about the act itself. It's about the aftermath, the betrayal of your trust, your stability, your sense of security. Lisa had stolen not just money but also my confidence in people. But I was determined not to let her take that away from me entirely. I had to rebuild my sense of self, piece by piece. The most surprising part of this whole mess was how much I'd underestimated her. She was a master manipulator, always knew how to lie, how to spin stories, how to make herself look like the victim. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? How did I let her get away with so much? But the truth was, I'd been blinded by love and hope. I wanted to believe she was different, that she was honest. Now I see that some people are just good at pretending, good at hiding their true nature until it's too late. I also realized that I wasn't alone in this. My friends and family stood by me, offering support and advice. They told me to keep my head up, to focus on healing, and to learn from this experience. I started to understand that sometimes you have to go through hell to come out stronger, and that's exactly what I intend to do. Looking ahead, I know there's still a long road to recovery. There are legal battles to fight, emotional scars to mend, and trust to rebuild, if I ever can. But I've made a promise to myself. I won't let her steal any more of my life. I will move forward, wiser and more cautious. I'll be more careful about who I trust, more vigilant about red flags, and more determined to protect what's mine. Because in the end, I learned that betrayal can come from the people you least expect, and you have to be prepared to fight for yourself, no matter how painful it gets. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything that's happened, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. Lisa's betrayal was a wake-up call I never saw coming. I thought I knew her, thought I knew my marriage, but it was all built on lies. The money, the house, the affair, all of it shattered my illusions and forced me to confront the brutal truth. Some people are just out for themselves, willing to destroy anyone who gets in their way. I've learned that trust is a fragile thing. Once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived her manipulations, her lies, her theft. I fought back with everything I had, lawyers, investigators, my own resilience. And I won, in the sense that I took back control of my life, even if the scars remain. Looking back, I see how naive I was to believe that love alone could keep a relationship afloat. Lisa's actions proved that some people are incapable of genuine loyalty. Her bitchy, manipulative nature made it clear she'd do anything for money, for power, for her own selfish ends. She thought she could cheat, steal, and lie her way through life, and I was just a pawn in her game. Now I'm focusing on rebuilding. I've moved out, started fresh, and begun to trust myself again. I've cut all ties with her and am determined not to let her shadow haunt me anymore. The inheritance she stole from her shady ex, the house she pawned, those are just symbols of her greed and deception. They're gone, and I've learned to let go of what I can't control. One thing I want to say to anyone reading this is be careful who you trust. People can hide their true selves behind a pretty face or a kind word, but their actions reveal everything. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't dismiss your instincts. And if someone shows you they're dishonest or manipulative, don't hesitate to walk away. Because once your trust is broken, it's hard to get it back. This experience has taught me that life can be cruel, but it also teaches resilience. I've lost a lot, my marriage, my sense of security, money I worked hard for, but I've gained clarity. I know now that I have to be more cautious, more aware, and more protective of myself. I won't let anyone else play me for a fool again. In the end, I'm grateful I found out the truth before she could take everything else from me. I may have lost the illusion of the perfect marriage, but I gained a new perspective. I learned that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to realize your worth. And from here, I plan to build a better, stronger life, without her, without the lies, without the betrayal. Because I deserve that much. and I'm never letting anyone take it from me again.